recent presentations we've done over the last few weeks. Might be a little bit of a repetition, but I hope that there'll be some new content as well that you'll take away. And I hope too that we'll have some time before the end of the session today to just really kind of open this up and make it a space to share, ask questions. And I know we have many folks who are joining us for today's session that have been doing TimeSlips and creative engagement for a long time. So I hope too, when it comes time to have a conversation, that it won't just be myself and Kathy perhaps sharing on this too. We'll hopefully be able to hear from a few of our friends and trainers too who are joining us from across the country and the world. So before we continue, I would like to just start with a land acknowledgement. And I'm speaking from Detroit, Michigan. And I acknowledge that here in Detroit, we are on the traditional lands and territory of the Anishinaabe people, also known as the Three Fires of the Confederacy, comprising the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi. The forced removal of Indigenous people from these lands is a history that must be acknowledged, along with the current struggles of all Indigenous people. Thank you. So like many of our previous webinars, we are going to also start things off with a little bit of an icebreaker with a beautiful question. If you are new to TimeSlips and our work and you don't know what a beautiful question is, we will talk about that a little bit later on. But quite simply, a beautiful question is a question that can be answered however you like. There is no right or wrong answer. And as we're entering into the holiday season here, I tried to pick some questions today that we might feel are sort of appropriate to the season and a time where many of us are giving and receiving gifts. So the question on our screen here, the beautiful question, what gift would you give the next generation? If you want to respond to that question, we invite you to put your response into the chat there. I know many of you as you were coming in were also introducing yourself and sharing where you're coming from. So if you didn't get a chance to do that, would like to do that now as well, you can go ahead. So I see Cheyenne got us started off with the gift of music past. Thank you very much. So I invite you to keep putting your responses in there as we continue. So before we move on any further, just a brief sort of overview of what we're going to do today. We're going to again have a very brief overview of those new resources that we've developed for friends and family. I don't want to spend too much on that because again, I feel like a lot of that might be repetition for some of you. But for anybody that is joining us for the first time, we also want to make sure that you do understand what we mean when we talk about these new resources for friends and families. We'll also get a chance to practice a little bit of creative engagement. So we'll do a creative storytelling session over Zoom. And then, as I said earlier, we'll have some time just to sort of open the floor to conversation, and we'll be sharing some common questions and tips that came up from some of the previous webinars we've done over the last few weeks. And also we'll have some time to answer any new questions that come up today as well. So again, for anyone who is joining us who does not know about TimeSlips and who we are, for about 20 years, we have worked with care partners to replace the pressure to remember with the freedom to imagine. And by doing this, we are bringing meaning and purpose into the lives of elders through creative engagement. Many of you know too that we offer hundreds of prompts and online tools for creative storytelling and other engaging activities for people of all ages and abilities. And our new Friends and Family resources is a new addition to those tools and those resources, which are free. And by doing this, we harness the power of imagination to change the way the world understands aging and dementia. So again, our new resources for friends and family, which we launched just about a month ago now, which we're very, very proud of, include a new dedicated subpage of the TimeSlips website with a new online training, TimeSlips for Friends and Family. And also accompanying that training, we have downloadable resources to help you host what we're calling a TimeSlips engagement party. And those include a downloadable invitation and post-it template that you can use, a guest handout that you could print or email to folks that might be attending your party, whether it's an in-person or virtual one, and also a more robust and hopefully helpful facilitator and host guide for anybody who might want to host an engagement party, but maybe wants a little bit more of that sort of guidance and suggested language to share as you do that. The friends and family training, the online aspect, we're again very happy to share with folks online. The training itself only takes about 45 minutes to complete. So compared to some of our other training that some of you may have experienced in the past, It contains some of the same information that we've just tried to condense in a way and present to, again, primarily friends and family caregivers. But the training could be a wonderful introduction to anyone who wants to learn a little bit more about our organization and our work. And again, that introduction to creative engagement. And again, for anybody who would like to host an engagement party, but maybe feels like they want to brush up a little bit on TimeSlips and how to kind of share our techniques with other people, that watching the training would be a great way to kind of do that as well. The content and the way that the content is organized in the training mirrors the engagement party content quite closely as well. So again, it would be a wonderful opportunity for anyone who wants to host an engagement party to get a little bit of that review, but also a very simple gesture that perhaps if you know someone that you think could benefit from maybe experiencing this training, sending them the link via email if they have access to an internet and are able to watch it online is a wonderful way to take advantage of that training as well. And then accompanying the training is, again, the new engagement party resource as well, which we're very proud of. And I'm happy to say we've already heard of a few people that are thinking about using the resources. And again, if you joined us for one of the webinars over the last few weeks as well, we heard from a few people that helped us develop these resources, caregivers like many of you. And once again, we're promoting these gatherings as informal and joyful gatherings. We want these to be fun, joyful gatherings and not necessarily feel like a lesson or like an instruction time. And they're for anybody really who wants to learn a little bit more about creative engagement and how to engage with a friend, family member, or neighbor who might be lonely, frail, or it's experiencing memory loss. And again, at engagement parties, guests will leave those sessions, again, whether it's an in-person or virtual one, learning 3 simple engagement techniques that can be used to create meaningful moments of imagination, once again, with no right or wrong answers. So another quick glimpse of what those resources look like. So those downloadable resources on the website. There's the invitation and poster templates there on the screen. In the center there is the cover for the engagement party guest handouts, which is ideally we designed that as the kind of takeaway element that people could take with them, so that even after the engagement party has ended, they have a physical resource that they can go back to refer to kind of refresh their memory on creative engagement. And then accompanying that as well is the facilitator and host guide that we created to, again, provide people who want to host a session of their own with a little bit more support and guidance of how to introduce the techniques, talking points, how to present it, and so forth. Again, we designed these resources in collaboration with a wonderful design and creative agency here in Detroit called Lafayette American. And we're really proud of how they look. And we hope that in addition to the content being very helpful and informative, that you'll also find them really beautiful to look at as well, because we're very, very proud of them. So we're going to move now into, again, a little bit of a demonstration of what you get to see or get to experience in the engagement party program itself. So in that format and in the friends and family training as well, we go over the sort of history of TimeSlips and some of our core concepts, including the first one, which is on our screen now, yes and. So again, for those of you maybe unfamiliar with our work and what we mean by yes and, in the world of improvisation and sort of theater and performance, yes and is that golden rule. And for any of you joining us that has a background in that, you'll know that it's a wonderful way to kind of keep a story or a sort of in the moment scene kind of active and moving on and adding to the story rather than kind of shutting it down. But in the world of healthcare, it's perhaps a little bit more of a different concept to get used to, because what it's asking us to do is respond to the person that we're caring for exactly as they are now in that moment and not who they used to be. With yes and is that act of asking beautiful questions, which we practiced a little bit earlier today with that question, what gift would you give the next generation? So as I said then, beautiful questions are ones that open up a shared path of discovery. They're open-ended questions. You can answer them in any way you would like. So there's no right or wrong answer. And as we saw, they can be used as a wonderful little way to kind of start a creative conversation. The responses can sometimes be simple, playful, joyful, but often they can be quite profound and perhaps open up a new creative conversation and connect with somebody in a deeper and more meaningful way. So those of you familiar with our techniques know that we use yes and beautiful questions as part of our creative storytelling activity. So we use a variety of prompts to encourage people to connect and have creative conversations together and imagine stories together. And one of the ways we do that is using image prompts. And the last engagement party launch that we did in November, we had a few people asking questions about prompts and the type of images to use and asking for some other sort of advice on how to find images and how to perhaps do these sessions in a new way if it's not something you could do in person, or even if it's perhaps something that you're doing one-on-one rather than in a larger group setting. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later today. But before we do that, we're also going to just have a little practice creative storytelling session. So for those of you that are brand new to us, this will be a wonderful way for you to just get a little taste of the creative engagement activities that we cover in the Friends and Family training and in the Engagement Party program. And for those of you that are well-versed in time slips and creative engagements, sit back and enjoy. And I hope that you'll appreciate just being on the kind of receiving end of this session for once. So we're going to go to an image on the next slide now. And in a moment, I'm going to ask a series of questions, beautiful questions. And I invite you to respond to those questions in the chat. We've got, I think, about 25 people joining us. So I'll do my best to echo and to repeat the responses as they come in. And we're going to imagine a story together over Zoom. And just in case, I think I did see that there might be some people calling in. And just to clarify, if anyone's not able to see the content on the screen in front of us right now, I'm going to provide a very basic visual description of the image. But I also do this as an example of also to show you that you could, if you were trying to do a creative engagement session using creative storytelling over the phone, and perhaps then you don't have the option of kind of looking at an image together, here's a way that you could maybe describe an image to someone to help them imagine that image in their own mind and then build a story from there. So the image that I see in front of me is of a dog that's looking kind of straight at the camera. And just in the distance behind the dog in the living room is a Christmas tree with a few wrapped gifts underneath the tree. So I'm going to start with a few questions now. And again, I invite you to put your responses in the chat. So to kick things off, what do we think is happening here? What would we like to say is happening in this image? So Juliet says, Snoopy is guarding the tree. Thank you, Juliet. Anyone else? What do you think? What we'd like to say is happening here? Okay, he's waiting for his presents or thinking, which present is mine? He's looking for a big or hoping for a big dog treat. And the good boy hopes Teresa has a gift for him too. All right, now the responses are coming in a little fast now, so I'll try to keep up. Could be sniffing out his presents or waiting for his master to leave open the presents. Tracy says he's sad because he hasn't got one of the presents. Or maybe he ate one. Kathy says, I don't smell any treats for me, and that's his sorry face. And Juliet added, he can hear all the children about to come in. Fantastic, thank you. Wonderful responses so far. And what shall we call this dog? Sarah says Boris. Fred, long face, all wonderful names, Frank, Bubba. Andrew says Fritz. And Juliet is sticking with Snoopy. Carol says Roberts. All wonderful names, thank you. Percy, Winston. I had a dog called Winston once. I like that. Fantastic. All wonderful names. And whatever you would like to call the dog, whatever name you land on, what are they thinking about right now? What might Percy be thinking about right now? Kathy says, dog bones, dog bones, dog bones. Love it. Juliet says, stuck between guarding and hunger. Tracy says, perhaps he wants a walk. Food, ball, walkies. Sarah says, Boris wants to get closer to the tree, but has been prohibited. Deborah says, put down the camera and feed me. When's dinner? Who are all these people looking at me? He's looking longingly at his owner, says Laura. And Cheyenne says he's longing for a treat for sure. Oh, and Charlotte says, I hope there isn't a cat under there. Fantastic. And who else might be near this image? Who might be near to our friend sitting by the Christmas tree? Well, Juliet says he's thinking, I'm such a good dog. Might there be anyone else nearby? The cat princess, the squirrel waiting to pounce. Maybe Santa Claus. Maybe our dog can hear Santa Claus. Juliet says his owner who is telling him to stay. Tracy says he's meowing from a box. Or we can hear meowing from a box. Kathy says he's thinking guarding the tree from the kittens. I think he's doing a good job of that too. And let's just do a couple more questions here. Andrew says the little girl who was looking for a Santa hat to put on the dog. I wonder how our dog would feel about putting a Santa hat on their head. What sounds might we hear in this image? What sounds might there be surrounding our friend, the dog, and the Christmas tree? Oh, maybe there's some Christmas music playing, bacon sizzling from the kitchen. I wonder if you can make the sound of bacon sizzling yourself at home. I'm a vegetarian myself, but I still love the smell and the sound of bacon sizzling. That's Sammy says Charlie Brown Christmas. Sarah says Brenda Lee's song Jingle Bell Rock. Kathy says children laughing, ripping a paper as he gets to his dog treats. Lots of commotion from relatives coming over. Fantastic. We got a few in there already, but I wonder any other smells that we might imagine are related to this image. There's a little kid playing the piano. Gingerbread and cinnamon. The scent of pine. Cookies. Cheyenne said pine too. Eggnog. Thank you, Betsy. Great responses so far. Oh, and Grandma's fancy perfume. Okay. I wonder how our dog, whether they like that fancy perfume scent or not. Great. Let's just do a couple more questions and then we'll sort of bring this little demonstration to a close. We've heard some great details of our imagining our story so far, but what do we think might happen next? We've got our dog waiting patiently to perhaps open a present that might be for them. We've heard some of the sounds and the smells that we might imagine surround this image as well, but what might happen next in our story? Oh, maybe it's time for a nap. Boris will lose all restraint and lunge at the tree. Uh-oh. Tracy says the dog will rip open the box with the kitten sounds. He's going to head to the kitchen while the owner is out of the room. Oh, maybe he's going to steal some of that bacon. He'll put his head on my lap and wait to be petted. Oh, that's nice. Maybe you can imagine the petting the dog's head together. The father comes home from work with a special dog treat. There'll be some barking. I would bark for you right now, but I'd be concerned if I did. My dog, who's outside, might get a little concerned about me. So I'll let you bark at home. Fantastic responses, everyone. Well, one more question then. Great responses to help us imagine a story for this image here. Does anyone have a suggestion of what we could call this story? Tracy says Fred. Thank you, Tracy. Christmas morning. Thank you, Deborah. Christmas through a dog's eyes. Bacon, bacon, and more bacon. First one up. All wonderful titles. Snoopy's Christmas. Fantastic, everyone. Well, thank you. I hope you enjoyed that little demonstration of creative storytelling there. Again, for those of you that might be newer to TimeSlips and our work, what we practiced there was all of the questions that I asked to get your responses in the chat there were those beautiful questions. So they were framed in a way that you could respond in any way you liked, and you saw that we had several different responses, and all were acceptable. I tried my best to echo and respond to them as they came in. I apologize if I maybe missed a few. That's one of the challenges when you're doing this activity with a larger group on Zoom like this. And many of you who are familiar with our work know that another element of creative storytelling is to kind of read that story back as a sort of final performance. I'm not going to do that for you right now because we had quite a lot of responses in the chat there, and I want to make sure we have some time for some of the other things to get through today. But what I will do is once we finish this webinar is I will get the chat transcript, and I'll do my very best to gather everyone's responses and put them together for this story and share that with all of you. Perhaps we'll put it on our Facebook or other social media as well. And thank you. Yep, Kathy, I agree. Love those responses, and I hope you enjoyed that. And just a quick, before we move into some other common questions and sort of tips about creative storytelling, I know many of you are perhaps finding new and creative ways to lean into yes and use Zoom and other platforms as a way to do creative engagement and to do creative storytelling. So I hope that maybe gave you a little bit of a demonstration of how to do that there too. I know it can be a little tricky when you are perhaps hosting a gathering like this and also trying to kind of facilitate. So a little tip that I learned is that in Zoom you can, right now, if you could see my computer screen, I've got my my PowerPoint shared in one window, but you can open the chat window in a separate little browser so that I can still see the responses as they're coming in. I found that really helpful when I've been facilitating some sessions with groups and it's just been myself. But if you have someone that is maybe working with you, I've also facilitated some sessions over the last few weeks with my colleague Elaine, and it was really helpful to have someone else kind of audibly echoing and repeating the responses as they came in as well. So I hope that maybe gives you some tips or some ideas of how you can do a little bit of creative storytelling on Zoom. We recognize too that not everyone has the access, has the internet access or the technological perhaps know-how to use Zoom and other platforms for creative storytelling. So the next few moments of our session, we're going to talk about some other ways that you can perhaps find ways to connect. Again, we know that Zoom is not for everyone, but we also know that many people during the last year have really risen to the occasion and found new ways to connect. And while technology is a barrier for many people, we recognize that for many people too, it still can be a wonderful way to connect. So when we did the engagement party launch a few weeks ago, a few other questions that came up that we didn't quite get the time to answer were the questions that are on the screen right now. So one question came up was who can use the engagement party resources and how? And there was also a question whether or not if you are interested in using the resources, whether you need to kind of check in with us at TimeSlips again to kind of to share information about your session, how many people attended, who where it was, that sort of thing. There's no requirement to share any information or to ask permission to use the resources. But naturally, we would love it if you do use the resources to host an engagement party, whether it's a virtual gathering like this or whether a small in-person gathering as well. We would certainly welcome any sort of testimonials or stories of ways that you've been able to use our resources. But we just wanted to clarify that these resources are really for anyone who might be finding or seeking new ways to connect with a friend or family member who might be experiencing memory loss, or perhaps not. While the session, the content itself does talk a little bit more specifically at times about engaging with people living with memory loss, we found over the last few months of developing these resources that it can be wonderful for many people. We talked in the launch too about this being a wonderful way to connect with younger family members and relatives as well, particularly those that might live very far away from you. So just to reiterate that these resources really are for anyone to use. We welcome your feedback and any success stories or questions you would like to share with us after. But again, there's no kind of system in place for you to kind of check in with us about asking permission to use them. We welcome you to adapt them to suit your needs. And we did talk about a little bit more in the launch Just to clarify that if you are new to TimeSlips, to access those resources, you will have to create an online account, but it's free and relatively simple to do so. So that's the only sort of system in place to make sure that once we know who is accessing those resources, and then you'll be connected to our organization, and you can keep in touch with us if you like. Another question that came up last time was how to use creative engagement without overwhelming someone. And at this moment, I know Kathy, who welcomed you at the start of this webinar, is a wonderful TimeSlips facilitator. So Kathy might come in and share some tips at this moment. And I know many of you as well have been doing this work for a long time. So if any of you have comments or suggestions to any of these questions that came up from the previous webinar, I invite you to share those in the chat as well. So I'm going to start by saying how to use creative engagement without overwhelming someone. Recognize that if you are perhaps someone that has been doing the creative storytelling with large groups, and as we just witnessed as well, when we had about 25 people contributing to the responses, the storytelling goes quite fast and there's a lot of responses coming in and it feels quite lively and active. Obviously, when you're doing creative storytelling one-on-one, if you're perhaps caring for someone at home and you try to do the storytelling activity with just one person, you're going to have a very different experience, and it can perhaps be difficult as a facilitator to really just keep that patience and be okay with silence, knowing that just because you've asked a question and the person that you're asking that question of may not respond immediately, it may take them a few seconds to kind of to offer a response. So being comfortable with silence and repeating those questions is a good way to do that. And also we remind people to consider alternative ways of responding, recognizing that not everybody we might be trying to communicate with may be able to offer a verbal response. So if you can maybe invite them to offer a response in sound or movement or gesture, and kind of modeling some of those as well might be a nice way to kind of ease into that. We also encourage people that are very new to our engagement techniques is maybe just start with the beautiful questions as one kind of simple way to start to build up that comfort level of both you as the facilitator, the person asking those questions, but also for the person that you're asking the questions of. Getting them kind of used to having those different kind of conversations, just starting with questions, the beautiful questions, might be a really easier way to kind of start that and perhaps build up to using prompts, whether it's an image like we just did or other prompts as well. We know too that we've heard from a lot of other people that are finding maybe more success doing the virtual creative engagement in different platforms other than Zoom. I know that Kathy has shared a little bit about using FaceTime if you have an iPhone as another way, if you do have someone that has, again, access to those resources. And we also encourage people, if maybe you want to try creative engagement over Zoom or other kind of a virtual platform, maybe just set up some sessions to kind of practice that first. If you are able to connect with a loved one that does have access and can connect, or can maybe have someone to help them do that. Maybe just having a few sessions where it's just about kind of seeing each other on screen and getting that person used to that might be a great place to start. I know too that for those of you that joined our Creative Care Institute over the summer, we heard from many kind of wonderful artists that we work with across the world who are using TimeSlips techniques. We had a wonderful demonstration by an artist, Gabri, who I know her mother lives overseas, and she's found a wonderful way to use Zoom and other platforms like this to connect by not even necessarily asking questions or doing the more traditional creative storytelling techniques, but doing a little bit of mirroring and kind of getting close to the camera and playing around with hands and things. And actually, I know that we have a video of that demonstration too, that, there we go, Kathy's put in the chat for you. So if anybody missed that and wants to look at that as another example of how to creatively use some of these virtual platforms as a way to engage, we invite you to check that out as well. Another question that came up at the last webinar we did was about prompts, the best type of prompts to use for creative storytelling. So I've got a few examples on the next few screens that I'll share with you, and these are examples that some will be featured in our new Imagination Kit, which is another resource that we've created for friends and families. And but before we do that, just a few tips that we've heard from kind of using selecting prompts is We encourage people to try and find prompts that perhaps have a clear sort of narrative or storytelling potential to them. So perhaps kind of like a clear character or one or two characters, people or animals that you can kind of focus on. Time period can can change. The images that we'll look at in a moment, some of them do have a kind of more specific time period attached to them. But really, we find that images from all periods can work. We often find that people have a lot of success using images that perhaps might have or rather I should say that something we hear from many people is that particularly family members may want to use personal family photos as a way to kind of do a creative storytelling activity with a loved one, as a way to kind of, again, use those shared memories as a way to connect. And we know that that is something that we all rely on, those shared memories with our friends and family members to connect. But again, we encourage people to remember that for someone living with memory loss, it might be challenging for them to kind of, or distressing to look at an image that they feel they're supposed to have a kind of connection to, and to be able to look at that image and not be able to remember the name or where that place, the photo took place or when. But something that we found success before or previously with is if perhaps you know that the family member or loved one that you want to engage with, you know something about their history and you would perhaps like to try and see if there's a way to connect to that, is maybe sharing images that don't come from their life but might perhaps unlock some of those experiences. So the two images I have on the screen here are two examples of that. Maybe if you know you have a friend or a loved one that grew up in a rural community, or maybe lived near a farm, an image that might have some of those elements included but is not from their life might be a way to unlock some of that. The other image on the screen here is actually an image from an assembly plant here in Detroit. And when we were developing the engagement party resources and the friends and family and the imagination kit rather, and I was testing out images, I had a wonderful time doing some sessions with a day center group in the city of Detroit, many of whom the participants were former factory floor employees. And so taking an image like this, while it didn't include them specifically or other kind of family members or specific moments from their life, it did open up some wonderful conversations and stories based on some of those experiences. So we were able to get a glimpse of that person's past, but we did it in a sort of more gentle way by showing them an image that had some kind of possible personal connection to them, but wasn't an image that included like that person or relatives themselves, if that makes sense. I'll add too that many of the sessions I did in Detroit with this image and some similar ones also usually turned into like a dance party, because very quickly the music and the sounds associated with that time and period or the image would come up, and the staff I worked with there were always really quick on anytime a song was mentioned, they had it queued up on the radio ready to go, and then we'd have a lovely sort of sing along. A lot of Motown greats, obviously, so a wonderful reminder there how images like this might also connect a song to a memory, and that can be another great way to engage with somebody. We also, also have a lot of success with images that feature animals and children. Children, we all have an association to children in some way, whether we had children in our lives, we have children, or we were children at some point, right? So images that feature children playing, we find are often quite popular. Images with animals as well, whether it's one or two that might seemingly not go together, like this dog and the horse featured right here. But both these images are good examples too of those ones that we mentioned earlier that have a kind of narrative or storytelling quality attached to them. Other tips that we share to sort of find helpful prompts, any image that might include movement of some kind. So we've got some dancing happening here. Another favorite image of mine is the street band there too with the instruments. And I included that one of the instruments too, as that's a great example too of another way to perhaps get someone to respond to one of these images might be to copy a gesture or movement that they see in that. So maybe doing a little bit of the dance that you see with the two partners there, or the person holding the saxophone. You could probably do a little bit of mirroring of like holding the saxophone as well. Asking questions about the type of music or the sounds that they would associate. And I see Rebecca asks if black and white photos are suggested. I'm really glad you pointed that, you brought that up. Not necessarily. I just used these examples from the Imagination Kit that we'll be releasing next year. And we made the decision with the designers when we were creating the kit, just for consistency, that we wanted all the images to be black and white. But as you'll see, the two images here are, we could probably guess, are a little bit more contemporary images, where the ones previously, if we were to guess, maybe would be a few, from a few years back. So we made that decision just to kind of give all the qualities this sort of timeless feel, but it's certainly not a requirement. And obviously the image we used previously for the creative storytelling session had a lot of color. So that's why we featured these images this way. But again, I'm really glad you brought that up, so thanks. So there are some examples of the types of images that we encourage folks to use. But just a little bit more information if you're not familiar about other ways to access resources. So once again, we have hundreds of images that have been used time and time again for successful creative storytelling sessions on our website. We also have other prompts as well that are not images, some that might be illustrations or images of just one or two simple objects. And all of those prompts are available for free. So we encourage you to take advantage of those if you're not already. But we also encourage people to think about objects and paintings perhaps that you have in your own home. When I was developing, again, the engagement party resources here in Detroit, I had a wonderful experience going to visit a friend of TimeSlips, Mark, and his father, who's living with memory loss. And Mark's father, Al, had an incredible art collection in his home. So while I went there to kind of talk about the creative engagement techniques and use some image prompts as a way to connect, it was also a wonderful opportunity to say that whatever piece of art may capture Al's attention on a given moment could also be used as a way to engage in a creative storytelling or a creative conversation. And even if you don't have a wonderful art collection on your walls at home, sometimes a simple question as looking out the nearest window and seeing what you see can be a great way to start. That can also be a wonderful way to kind of have those creative conversations that may lead to a story over the phone as well. If you're not able to share images together, or you're maybe trying to engage with someone who, again, there's a bit of a tech divide there, kind of asking a question about their what they see outside the window might be one way to do that. And Cheyenne, thanks for asking too. Pictures in magazines can be really good as well. We hope that you'll find, and I know many of you joining us today are seasoned TimeSlips facilitators, that the more you practice creative engagement and the more you become comfortable with it, you might find it a lot more easier to kind of move away from having kind of the one set image to use as a prompt. And you'll realize that often anything around us can be used as a prompt, whether it's a simple greeting card that you got in the mail, which I actually received from a caregiver I worked with recently, or even a little Lego action figure, whatever you have around you that could be used as a prompt. And people might find too that actually having that kind of a tactile object, pieces of fruits or other kind of food elements might be a better way to engage with people that might struggle if you're just kind of looking at one sort of set image. So we hope that some of those tips and sort of common questions, again, we didn't have time to answer all of the questions that came up in our launch in November, so we wanted to make sure that we did respond to those and hope that some of that information was helpful to you. We also want to use today's gathering as a way to promote a new Friends and Family Caregiver group that we've started on Facebook. So this is a private Facebook group for anyone who wants to kind of stay connected with us, who primarily is a friend or family caregiver. Others are welcome to join as well, obviously. And this will be a sort of private space for you to ask questions and maybe share other success stories you've been having using techniques. If you host an engagement party, perhaps maybe in a few months' time, if we're able to have safe, small gatherings together, if you have a really wonderful in-person engagement party and you had a really great recipe for some food that you shared, perhaps you could share your recipe on our Facebook group as well, and other tips or suggestions for other people to maybe have a similar session themselves. So Kathy's just put the link to that group in the chat there too, but also if you do use Facebook, you can just search TimeSlips Friends and Family Caregivers. Then you'll have to request to join as it's a private group. But we invite you to do so. And thanks, I think there's some people joining us here today that have already joined. So thank you for doing that. So real quick, and then we're going to open it up to other kind of questions and comments from other folks. What are some things that you could do next after today's gathering? Once again, if you are interested in our engagement party materials and you know people in your life, whether relatives or people as part of a larger network or professional network as well, and you think they would benefit from an engagement party, you can host an engagement party virtually. And if anyone has questions about how to do that, you can certainly reach out to me and I can provide you some tips. But those resources that I mentioned earlier, you can download them all as PDFs. So you can also email those to people that might be attending your session. They wouldn't require necessarily printing it off unless they would like to. So that's one thing that you can do. If I know for me, I'll be planning a lot of kind of virtual family gatherings over the next few weeks, as I have family scattered across the country and also back in the UK as well, where I'm from. So you might, if you have other sort of virtual gatherings planned, perhaps you could make part of those gatherings a little bit of an engagement party and share some creative engagement techniques with those folks. Something else very simple you could do is, as I mentioned earlier, share the link to the Friends and Family training with somebody that you think might benefit from it. Again, this training only takes about 45 minutes to complete, so it won't, it's not a big ask of someone's time. And again, it could be a wonderful gesture for someone that maybe you know is struggling and is seeking new ways to kind of connect and communicate with a loved one. So send them the link and see how they get on. Also, I know that many of you know about the widely successful postcard campaign that we've had this year, where we've had folks sending postcards to isolated elders and in care communities across the world. So perhaps you could use this time to reach out to an isolated friend or family member with a postcard, or maybe simply by calling them on the phone and asking a beautiful question. We've got some wonderful examples on our website and on our Facebook of the types of postcards and remote creative engagement that people have been doing. And you could perhaps think about asking a beautiful question that is seasonally appropriate. So another one that I put on the screen here is gift related, is what is the greatest gift you have ever received? So again, another simple way to kind of reach out to someone, whether that's a person living with memory loss or not. I don't know about you, but I'm certainly appreciating those little moments of connection with friends and family members who I don't get to see in person right now. And we all need that kind of connection and community. So it can be a really simple gesture that can really go a long way. So now we're going to open up to questions. If you have questions about the resources or anything that I've talked about today, or questions or ideas about what these friends and family gatherings might look like moving forward, we really want these to be a space for you to kind of take advantage of us and ask questions and share resources. So please let us know if you have a question or comments. Again, I know looking at the list of people who are joining us, I know that there's many skilled TimeSlips facilitators. So if anyone else has any suggestions or tips that they would like to add about introducing creative engagement to people that are new to this, I welcome your suggestions as well. We could probably even invite some people on to speak or come on camera if you would like. Liz, I see your question came in. You came in late, but how long does it take to go through the training? I've gone through it a few times now, and I estimate it will probably take about 45 minutes to complete. And that was with giving some time for imagining that, like, if I was taking notes or engaging in the kind of creative storytelling session myself and kind of writing down my responses. So it may take people a little longer, but we estimate probably no more than an hour to complete. So thanks for asking that. Any other questions or comments? Or Kathy, if there's anything else that you wanted to share, you're welcome to do so as well.
I was thinking about an engagement I had last week, and the individual was saying, well, I feel like I can't really interact with you because I'm on my iPad and you're on your computer. And we talked about how if you just picture it almost like it's plexiglass, that there's a barrier, but it's really only just a temporary barrier. And we can lean into the screen and use our facial expressions and just exude more love and more connection through that. It seemed to really help. It almost kind of broke the ice, like you don't feel like you have to be on, that you're really just gathering with somebody that you want to spend some time with. And the screen is kind of a minor nuisance, but ultimately it helps you just to be with somebody.
Thanks, Kathy. Sarah, I see your comment came in too. So doing beautiful questions with isolated elders who don't have computers. you mentioned you're experiencing some confusion about how to adapt the engagement party concept to one-to-one creative engagement by phone. Great question. Thank you for asking that, Sarah. So the engagement party format obviously can be used in many ways. There is some specific aspects of that content, and it's also in the friends and family training as well, about how you can do creative engagement in the more kind of traditional settings of group settings, group storytelling sessions, or one-on-one sessions as well. But we also did include a little bit more information about how to adapt those techniques to one-on-one sessions and also delivery by phone. So there is some content in there, and there's by no means any like steadfast rules that if you're doing an engagement party, you have to include all of the material that is included in the kind of handouts. You might decide to just pull out the elements that you find are the most successful. And I think we are all finding right now that that phone is a great way to connect for many people who perhaps don't have the Wi-Fi or the internet access, or also the comfort level using technology. So we can certainly, that perhaps could give us a really wonderful topic to maybe have a larger conversation as part of one of our next Friends and Family gatherings. Because I know that many people are finding a lot of success using doing creative engagement primarily by phone. So we could definitely make that a more focused topic of future conversations. But I do invite you to go back again, and if you haven't already checked the Friends and Family training and the resources as well, there is some specific elements there about how to kind of do creative engagement by phone. So you could quite easily perhaps do a mini engagement party and just kind of focus primarily on that phone engagement. I'll also add too, and Sarah, I'm happy to chat with you one-on-one about this, or anyone else as well. As we were developing these materials, I was able to do a few remote engagement parties delivered entirely by phone. When I did that, I did adapt the kind of materials that we had a little bit, but I will say that I still felt there were smaller groups. I had about kind of no more than like 3 or 4 people in those sessions when we did it by phone. But I was working primarily with caregivers, so I was essentially sharing with them over the phone how they could then replicate this at home. So I'd be happy to kind of share with you a little bit more of my experience of kind of adapting the materials there, if that would be helpful. And I see Anne's comment too about practicing how to bring light to your presence by phone and by computer is a really, really fascinating process. It can be like turning on a light switch, on, off, helps make our physical presence better too. Thanks. I know outside of my work with TimeSlips, I do a lot of work as a theater practitioner and teaching artist with young people. And I've found some ways to kind of adapt icebreaker games and other activities that I would maybe usually do in person with people over Zoom. And some of that too included like turning cameras on and off and playing around with backgrounds a little bit. Again, does require a little bit more sort of technological know-how of using kind of Zoom and this technology. But I offer that as a suggestion as well. You're welcome, Sarah. I know we've got a few minutes left, and I know Kathy has a few more closing comments she would like to share before we go. But if anyone else has any other questions or comments, we welcome them. All right. Well, if not, once again. Oh, I see Sarah's got another comment there. Finding the warm-up at the beginning of a Zoom types session, especially important in establishing visual personal connection, especially since our faces get so small when we're screen sharing the photo. Great advice there, Sarah. Again, I think I'm definitely going to have to follow up with you about maybe bringing you into one of these future gatherings and sharing some of your experience with us. I think that's a wonderful suggestion. Well, as we're sort of bringing things to a close, once again, if you want to access those new resources we talked about, those friends and family resources, you can find them on our specific friends and family subpage. The link is on the screen there. And of course, you are always welcome to email me at any times with questions or clarification, perhaps on how you can use these resources, or if you had a really wonderful success story using those resources, you want to share that with us, you're welcome to contact me and other folks at the TimeSlips team as well. So I want to just thank you all again for joining us. Wish you all a very safe and happy holiday season. And I'm going to pass things back over to Kathy to kind of close us up. So thank you, everyone.
We are just so grateful to have all of you here with us. For those of you who have been with us, we want to say thank you for being part of Time Slips. And for those of you who made our Giving campaign, Giving Tuesday campaign, such a success, and ask if you've benefited from Time Slips work this year. It's a year in which we, along with many other nonprofit organizations, were heavily impacted by COVID, that you would consider making a donation to support our work. You can go to timeslips.org/donate and make a contribution of any size and in honor of a friend, a family member, a loved one, and it would help us to know that our work is making a difference in the community. So thank you for everything that you do and for everything that you give to your communities, your loved ones, and all of us here at Time Slips. So we look forward to meeting with you again in 2021. And thank you again for your creative collaboration this year.